Hi, this is Jason Major with the Biblical Cinematic Universe. Today I'm talking about King of Kings. No, not the classic one, the animated one. Wait a minute, that's an animated film, but that's not King of Kings, that's Miracle Maker. Alright, let's try it again. So, King of Kings is distributed by Angel Studios, but it was made by Mofac Studios in South Korea, so they're a Christian animation house in South Korea. Seong-ho is the director and creator of this movie, and his team wrote and created this movie. And then there was an English script written by the guy who actually did one of the scripts for Captain America: Brave New World to do the English translation. That was kind of interesting to me. The voice cast include. This is based on The Life of Our Lord by Charles Dickens, which Charles Dickens wrote as basically a retelling of the gospel story that he would tell his children. So this is coming from that angle. So in many ways, this film kind of feels to me like both a combination of an animated film that it could be played at Easter, but also an animated film that could be played at Christmas time too. So let me give you the voice cast quickly. So of all-star voice cast, some of these are in smaller roles, but we have Kenneth Branagh as Charles Dickens, Uma Thurman as his wife, Mark Hamill does a small bit as the King Herod, who was after baby Jesus, Pierce Brosnan as Pilot's Pilot, Roman Griffith Davis, who played the young boy in Jojo Rabbit, directed by Taika Waititi. He plays Charles Dickens' son. Forrest Whitaker is in here as Peter. Ben Kingsley is the High Priest. Oscar Isaac, who played, ironically, in the Nativity story as Joseph, the surrogate father of Jesus, as well as been as famous for Moon Knight in the Marvel Universe and Apocalypse in the X-Men movie, as well as Poe Dameron in Star Wars. So he plays the voice of Jesus. D. Bradley Baker, who has done a lot of animated stuff, including, I believe, Batman. And then Jim Cummings is another famous actor who did Darkwing Duck. He's in this film, does voices in the film. James Arnold Taylor, who has done famous voices like Obi-Wan Kenobi and The Clone Wars. He is in this film in multiple roles, voice actor in multiple roles, and so is Vanessa Marshall, who did voices for Star Wars Clone Wars. So you got an all-star acting cast and an all-star voice acting cast doing this film. So what is this film? Again, it is basically the life of Jesus as Charles Dickens. Basically, he's telling the Christmas Carol story at the beginning of the movie, which is why I think that this will play well as like a Christmas film too. And then his son is kind of acting up at the theater, and then so he says, "Okay, I'll tell you this story about the true King of Kings instead." You know what I mean? So the way you have to go into this movie is that, unlike, say, like if you remember The Princess Bride, where it's a framing sequence at the beginning and ending of the movie, this is more that this is like the kid. This is the kid's imagination, right, of his father telling him the story of Jesus, and I would say that that's the only, not a warning, just to let you know what this version of the movie is that this movie is very much concentrating on the Charles Dickens and his son connecting to his father through the story of Jesus. And that is the interesting way that this movie is told. So, for example, Charles Dickens and his son, Walter, become characters in the historical time. You know what I mean? They don't act with people in the story like Jesus. They don't like talk to Jesus or talk to a computer or anything, but they do, like, you know, if young Jesus is lost at the temple, then the young boy is looking for Jesus, that kind of thing. So it's basically like they're in the story, if that makes sense. Like they're observers in the story is a better way of explaining it. The animation's beautiful. By the end, like unlike a lot of the early computer animation when I was younger, like where humans looked very plastic figurey, you know what I mean? They look like plastic figures. This looks very human, and even though it was animated, they didn't feel like Funko Pops or anything like that to me. They felt very like the motion capture of the people felt very real and organic, especially by the end of this movie. Now, is it the greatest hits of the Bible? Yes, it's going through the story very fast. It also going in at a things that are in the Bible more violent, like baby Jesus and the babies were slaughtered because of King Herod. They're kind of like toned down. It's implied that those babies were killed, but not shown. But it's for kids, so like if you're looking for this to be like. Ooh, why did Judas betray Jesus? Spoiler alert. That's not what this film is about. This film is about the Father and his Son. Amazing, I know. Simple concept. And I thought the animation was brilliant. It was emotionally involving. It was, I loved the story. I would say it is one of the best animated biblical films I've seen up until 2025. So like I'll have to rewatch Miracle Maker to see how it compares to Miracle Maker, which is more of a straight animated Life of Jesus movie. But no, this is a terrific film. If you're an adult, I would say go with the idea of if you love Toy Story and if you've ever gone to a church production of an Easter play where it's not just the Passion Play necessarily, but the entire Easter play. And this is what this film feels like for me. It felt like I could see this being an Easter play, actually, the way they told it. I could see them doing that as an Easter play on stage at a church, telling this version of the story. Maybe that will eventually happen. Because that was how well told it was and how it makes sense to me how you would do this. It gave me that feeling of going to an Easter church service. It reminded me of those things. I thought that just in terms of acting and performance, you'll get a lot of famous actors in this, but Oscar Isaac does do a great job of Jesus. He doesn't pretend to try and do like a... I don't think he's trying to do necessarily a Middle Eastern accent. Maybe he is, but like he's himself is what I'm saying. And he comes across as warm and and caring and loving. But also in this version, because it's focusing on things like the supernatural of Jesus healing and miracles, he's still very divine. Because it's showing like the miracles that would prove that he is the Son of God. So I highly recommend this film. I give it like an 8 out of 10. And I think that when I went to the theater, it was packed with little kids. I don't know how older kids would look at this film, but I would say that in terms of an adult, I give this film an 8 out of 10, and I think it's a high-quality production. Only weakness in the film is that there is an ad in the credits for like, hey, if you want to support this film, you can buy a free ticket for somebody else, but it's not a charitable donation. That kind of seemed tacky. I know some critics got their feathers all ruffled about it. I didn't ruffle my feathers. It was more like, man, I would have put that at before the film, as an advertisement before the film, and then, just be an ad and no one would worry about it, but like, because it's after, it kind of like makes you feel like, kind of like, don't let it ruffle your feathers. It's otherwise than that, that's my minor gripe. I enjoyed this film. The biblical stories there are a whole bunch of biblical stories in here. Last caveat is that obviously you can consider it a weakness if you want. There are some characters who will be in this a lot smaller than what you might expect, such as, I won't spoil it, but it's Mary Magdalene is not like the 13th disciple, like sometimes she's prayed. This is betrayed. This is more traditional, like there's Jesus, the 12 disciples, and then the high priest and a couple Pharisees who act as all the Pharisees who ever hated Jesus, and then of course Pontius Pilate and King Herod, and a little bit of Mary and Joseph. So yeah, go see this film, and happy Easter. Thank you. Bye.